Alexander the Great was the greatest leader ever, and maybe of all time. His legacy includes one of the most well-known conquerors of antiquity, one of history's greatest soldiers, and one of its finest military strategists. It has influenced both previous and future civilizations. He was a naturally born leader, with the capacity to lead and conquer. Compared to previous presidents, he demonstrated the best leadership qualities, and he exploited these qualities to leave a lasting legacy. Even though he lacked the management abilities to run his empire, he was nevertheless responsible for its existence. The expansion of the Macedonian imperial frontiers during the years 336 to 323 BC led to the designation of this period as the Age of Alexander II. Due to his exceptional leadership abilities, he is by far the greatest leader when considering both his whole reign and his accomplishments. He successfully built a new world that profoundly impacted Near Eastern culture throughout his 13-year rule. His unblemished military record, coronation as King of Macedonia, unification of humanity, and conquest of what the Greeks at the time referred to be the whole world all occurred by the time he was 33 years old. Who, even at an early age, can legitimately claim to have conquered the world? He is among the finest individuals in the ancient world because of his exploits in life and battle. He is still well known now, which is why he is the most well-known leader. Simply said, the man is legendary. After all, Alexander the Great is his name. Alexander took after his father in his early years as Macedonia's ruler until he started to rule and lead in his ways. Alexander's unbeaten war record suggests that he may have inherited his father's military prowess when it came to strategy and assault in battle. The first Greek commander to recognize the value of focusing forces on a particular force in the enemy army was Philip II, who developed a strategy that won by confusing the adversary. The fact that Alexander was fighting alongside troops who had previously received training from Philip II's skills may have contributed to his military victory. King Philip II and Queen Olympias welcomed Alexander III into the world at Pella, Macedonia in 356 BC. Still, according to tradition, Zeus, the supreme ruler of the Greek gods, was his father. The military might of Philip II was well known. He envisioned conquering the vast Persian Empire while making Macedonia, a region on the northern tip of the Greek peninsula, a power to be reckoned with. Alexander displayed great bravery when he tamed the massive stallion with a fiery attitude known as Bucephalus at age 12. For most of his life, Alexander fought beside the horse. Philip asked the famous philosopher Aristotle to instruct his son when Alexander was 13. Alexander's passion for literature, science, medicine, and philosophy was inspired and encouraged by Aristotle. When Philip departed to go to war and left his son in charge of Macedonia, Alexander was just 16 years old. During the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BC, Alexander saw a chance to demonstrate his military prowess and led a cavalry against the Sacred Band of Thebes, a purportedly unstoppable elite force made up solely of male lovers. Alexander demonstrated his grit and courage, and his cavalry destroyed the Sacred Band of Thebes. Alexander's father Philip was killed by his bodyguard Pausanias in 336 BC. At age 20, Alexander ascended to the throne of Macedonia and ended his enemies' attempts to overthrow him. Additionally, he put down independence-related uprisings in northern Greece. After cleaning the house, Alexander departed to carry on his father's legacy and expand Macedonia's world dominance. Alexander sent his troops to Persia and named General Antipater as regent. At the Granicus River, they encountered Persian and Greek armies after crossing the Hellespont, a constricting strait that separates the Aegean Sea from the Sea of Marmara. Alexander and the Macedonians triumphed. Alexander then moved south and captured Sardes with ease. But at the town of Miletus Mylassa and Halicarnassus, his troops ran against the opposition. Halicarnassus, unconquered under siege, resisted for long enough for King Darius III of Persia, the most recent monarch, to gather a sizable force. During the winter of 334 to 333 BC, Alexander invaded Western Asia Minor and defeated the Lycian and Pisidian hill tribes. He traveled toward Persia in the spring of 333 via the coastal route, avoiding the Mount Climax cliffs thanks to a fortunate change in the wind. One of Alexander's flatterers, the historian Callisthenes, saw the sea level decrease as a sign of divine favor. At Gordium in Phrygia, according to tradition, he cut the Gordian knot, which could only be undone by the one who would rule Asia. This legend, meanwhile, could be made up or at least overblown. Memnon, the skillful Greek in charge of the Persian naval, suddenly departed away, working in Alexander's favor. He traveled south via Cappadocia and the Cilician Gates, now Kulek Boaz, where a fever slowed him down from Gordium to Ancyra, modern Ankara. Darius and his grand army had been making their way north on the eastern side of Mount Amanus. Due to incomplete information from both sides, Alexander discovered that Darius was on his line of communication at Issus, north of his position. At the same time, he was already camped by Myriandres, close to modern-day Iskandera in Turkey, autumn 333 BC. Turning around, Alexander saw Darius assembled by the Pinaris River. Alexander won the ensuing battle and emerged triumphant. Darius left his family in Alexander's care. As the fight ended in a Persian loss, the women were treated bravely. To cut off the Persian fleet from its bases and destroy it as a strong fighting force, Alexander left Issus and traveled south into Syria and Phoenicia. Parmenio was sent ahead of the Phoenician cities Marathus and Aradus to guard Damascus and its priceless booty, including Darius's war chest. In his arrogant reply to Darius's letter offering peace, Alexander reiterated the wrongs of ancient Greece and demanded total surrender to himself as ruler of Asia. After taking over Sidon, Arabic, and Byblos, modern Judea, he encountered opposition in Tyre and was sent away from the island's capital. He then planned to take it by utilizing all siegecraft skills, but the Tyrians resisted for 7 months. The Persians launched a land and sea counterattack in the winter of 333 to 322 BC, recaptured several cities and islands until Antigonus, the satrap of Greater Phrygia, routed them. After Alexander destroyed Tyre, most of the settlements on the route to Egypt quickly surrendered. But in Gaza, Alexander ran with hostility. Because it was well defended and set on a hill, the castle needed to be sieged. After 3 unsuccessful assaults, the castle was ultimately conquered, but not before Alexander seriously hurt his shoulder. Women and children were sold into slavery, like at Tyre, while males of military age were slaughtered. Alexander took over several other countries from the Persians, including Egypt. During a stay in Siwa, Alexander was crowned at the Temple of Ptah in Memphis. The Egyptian populace doesn't appear to have been bothered by the fact that he was a foreigner or that he was absent of most of his rule. Alexander rebuilt the temples the Persians had abandoned and erected brand new sculptures of the Egyptian gods. He built a chapel for the sacred barge at the Luxor Temple at Karnak. He oversaw the country's military conquest during his brief stint in Egypt. He redesigned the tax structure following Greek models, but in early 331 BC, he departed for Asia to hunt down the Persians. Alexander later attacked Egypt in 332 BC, where he was hailed as a liberator. To demonstrate his authority and position himself as the heir to the long line of pharaohs, Alexander offered sacrifices to the gods at Memphis and journeyed to the Siwa oasis to see the famed oracle of Amun-Ra. Despite his many successes, Alexander felt there was more of the world to discover and expand upon. In the wake of his untimely demise, he failed to appoint a successor, and his empire was eventually split among his 32 generals. Alexander had little time to prepare for his succession because of the suddenness of his death. Alexander did something right, or else he wouldn't have become so well known or successful in building an empire. His leadership style inspired loyalty in his troops, and they could do far more than their wildest dreams had predicted. His efforts to unite Greek and Middle Eastern cultures continued long after his death. That's all for today, folks, and we hope you enjoyed the video. Would you rather get into a fight with Alexander for your significant other, or spend a year in jail with him?